But this comes after Ukraine fired 8 American-made ATACMS into Russia, according to US officials. ATACMS are missiles with a maximum range of close to 200 miles, and their target was a military facility in the Bryansk region of southern Russia, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. Now, President Biden gave permission to Ukraine to use ATACMS deep inside Russian territory 3 days ago. Before that, their use was more limited because of concerns the powerful weapons could further escalate this conflict.
Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and on another episode of What's Going On in the World Today. What are we talking about? We are talking about, as I'm sure a lot of you have probably already seen and heard in the last couple days, the United States officially approving using our long-range missile systems to attack Russia. Okay, so for all the euphoria of Trump taking office and everybody thinking how great things are going to be, turns out we're not quite out of the woods yet, and we're going to talk about that today. Okay, so what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about what these missile systems actually are. Okay, I'm sure you've been hearing the terms, right? ATACM missiles, HIMARS. We're going to talk about what these things actually are, their capabilities, how they're actually used, things like that. We're going to talk about why the U.S. approved this and is supporting doing this. Talk about Russia's response, because they just responded recently. What happens in the short term in the escalation of the conflict, and then what's going to happen once Trump takes office. Okay, so let's jump right into it, and actually let's talk about what an ATACMS missile or HIMARS missile systems, what these things actually are, because I think you hear these terms get thrown around, but understanding what they really are is also important to understanding the escalation of the conflict. Okay, so what is an ATACMS? All right, the Army Tactical Missile System. It's basically it's a missile system, right? It says, but it is the actual missile. Okay, so it's a long-range missile, supersonic ballistic missile. It's got max effective range of around 190 miles, close to 200 miles. Okay, so it technically is an artillery missile, as we'll see in the definition of what HIMARS is, but it doesn't act the same way as like an artillery shell. It's an actual missile. Okay, it's GPS guided. Okay, so which means it has super high technology in the missile itself, and has an accuracy range of about within 3 meters. So what that means is from a 10-digit GPS coordinate, that missile is most likely going to land within 3 feet of that. So extremely accurate. Okay, you can carry a bunch of different stuff. The one that's going to be typically seen getting used here is a 500-pound HE, high explosive warhead. All right, it also can drop sort of cluster bomblets. Those are anti-personnel type munitions, and it does have, well, we don't see it here, the capability to carry chemical, biological, and nuclear warheads as well. Okay, now you might also hear people talking about how HIMARS rockets were used to attack Russia. Okay, here's understanding, like HIMARS, okay, which is the high mobility artillery rocket system, is the actual launcher that launches the missiles. So we got a picture of this. Okay, here, so you have the HIMARS launcher, which is attached typically to an M1140 military truck. You can use different things, right? And then the ATACM missiles are a type of missile that can be shot out of the HIMARS. Okay, so the HIMARS is the delivery system. ATACMS is the missile itself. Hopefully that makes sense, right? And guys, before we get any further into the video, right, we have a quick shout out from our sponsors. As you can see, Barbell Apparel, for those of you who don't know, recently partnered with the guys over at Barbell Apparel, and guys, they make the most comfortable clothing you're ever going to wear, and especially their pants. Okay, so right now Barbell has a Black Friday sale about to go on where you can get yourself a pair of their pants for $99. And guys, I'm telling you, these are some of the most high quality, comfortable pants you're ever going to wear. Absolutely worth the cost. You go and buy some, I promise you'll probably throw out the rest of your pants. I already did. It's the only thing I wear anymore. Okay, so it's also really important, you guys, that you support our partners, because they support the channel. So the best way you can support the channel is head on over, buy yourself a pair of Barbell jeans, follow my link. You can have my own page over there that shows you what I like to wear. Cop yourself some jeans. You're not gonna regret it, I promise. All right, let's keep moving into the video. All right. So why did the U.S. approve this? Okay, so the formal reason that we've given, the Department of Defense, right, is that this was a retaliation for the escalation of bringing North Korea into the war. Supposedly, there's over 100,000 North Korean troops who are now taking part of the war. And I know people are trying to say that's not true, that's fake. I mean, there's already KIA pictures of North Koreans coming out of Ukraine, so take that for what it is, right? In reality, so you guys understand, we've actually already been letting Ukraine use a version of this, which if you've heard a while back, we approved them to use our HIMARS, the launcher system, to launch the low or the short range variant of this type of missile. Okay, so that's been going on since 2023. What's new here is using the actual long range ATACM missiles. Okay, so that's what's sort of the next escalation up in sort of this tick for tack back and forth, right? So what initially is reported is that Zelensky requested approval to use Tomahawk missiles. Okay, so Tomahawk cruise missiles. Tomahawk cruise missiles, all right, are obviously much more devastating missile. They can shoot up to, I believe, 1,500 miles. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's right. 1,500 miles, which is about 10 times as far as a HIMARS can shoot an ATACM. Why is that important? Okay, because it's gonna tell us and show us what Zelensky really wanted out of this strike, right? So up here is a map of the current HIMARS systems that Ukraine has and sort of the max effective rings that they have. And as you can see, they can reach into these Western Russian zones, okay, but they can't reach into Moscow, right? So what does that tell us? Well, that what Zelensky really wanted was a 1,500 mile radius Tomahawk cruise missile because he could strike Moscow with them. Okay, now I can tell you this, if that were to happen, or if it were to have happened, if cruise missiles sent by basically the United States naval ships would have hit Moscow, that would have been escalation into full-scale direct conflict with Russia and the United States, 100%. So at least we had the wherewithal to not approve that craziness, all right? But this is still a really serious thing in escalation. And what it is, like, the United States, technically it's one of those things of like, oh, we're providing the equipment, okay? Do you think the Ukrainian troops know how to operate, upkeep, and use our ATACM and HIMAR and Gimler equipment? No, of course not. There's American troops who are there teaching them, here helping them, and probably just firing missiles themselves. So, in reality, this is the United States basically directly escalating to be part of the conflict, which is obviously not good for the long-term outcome of this war, right? We want this war to die down, not escalate into World War III, which it seems like everybody wants us to do so bad, okay? Now, another reason, like what I think the real reason why the United States is doing this, not North Korea entering the war and escalation, and I've said this over and over and over again in other videos, and that is that they want to set Donald Trump up for failure, okay? And how do you do that? You push a geopolitical conflict out of control, hopefully multiple, Israel, Iran, Ukraine, Russia, spiral them out of control, okay, to the point where it's going to make it extremely difficult for Trump to be able to walk these things back, okay? So that is, and I don't, maybe that's not the case, but it's obviously pretty obvious that is pretty much a week and a half after Donald Trump gets elected, we're all of a sudden deciding to approve sending ATACM and HIMARS to directly attack Russia, okay? So that's what's really going on. Also, the idea here too is completely destabilize Europe, right, and the world, okay? That's going to make things even worse if you can crash the global economy, things like that, right? And they're also, I'm sure, being heavily pressured by the military-industrial complex to try to ramp this thing out of control before Trump takes office, okay? So if you guys could guess who makes the HIMARS and ATACMs, I bet you can't. Lockheed Martin, shocker, right? So if this war goes away and the Israel-Iran conflict goes away, that's billions and billions of dollars that are not funneling into pockets, okay? So there's a lot of incentive to escalate this thing beyond control, okay? So I think it's for Ukraine, and I don't feel bad for Zelensky. I feel bad for the Ukrainian people, because what I think is happening here, obviously they're being used as a political pawn for the United States right now, but it's really short-sighted and dumb, right, for Ukraine to be trying to massively escalate this conflict. This conflict is on its way to die down, okay? The reality of it, and we'll talk about it here in the long-term effects, is it's going to end, and it's going to end shortly. So if you're trying to have bargaining power at the table, which there's going to be negotiations made, and land is going to get split up, I can guarantee you that. Maybe not trying to escalate the conflict and pissing off the other party right beforehand, probably not the best idea, because the reality is when Trump takes office, the Zelensky money printer goes bye-bye. Ukraine cannot fight this war without the United States. The United States is basically 100% funding this conflict now. Without the money, the war ends, period. There's no discussion about it. Ukraine cannot fight on their own. That is all over, okay? So they have no bargaining power when this does come to the table. The United States is big brother that is going to make those decisions, okay? So again, I think it's really stupid and short-sighted on Ukrainians' part, or Zelensky's part, and really by extension the United States, right? And also, guys, I obviously am not pro-Ukraine. I'm not pro-Russia. I am pro-America. And I have my feelings on this conflict, and it's been since the very first day of the war, is that the United States has no business being involved, right? Whether you agree with that, don't agree with that, I don't really care. But I have been consistent from that. You can look back through 100 videos, and you will not see a single comment from me war stoking or supporting this war in any way, shape, or form. And I am proud of my convictions from the very beginning of that, whether you agree with that or not. I don't care. But that's the reality of it, okay? So again, not some pro-Russia bot or pro-Ukraine NPC. I just don't think the United States needs to be involved in a Slavic civil war. That's my feelings. All right, moving on, okay? So Russia's response, okay? So Russia responded to this, obviously. This is a massive escalation by Ukraine and the United States. Excuse me. And they responded by launching a new intercontinental ballistic missile system and attacking Ukraine with that, okay? Now, ICBMs can obviously carry nuclear warheads and nuclear payloads. This one was not. I'm assuming it's a high explosive payload. But it basically was an escalation demonstration from Russia of, hey, we can and are willing to use our ICBMs. On top of that, all right, Putin went in and changed his guidelines for escalation to nuclear war. He's basically drawn them way back, and what that means is he's saying his personal or Russia's right to use nuclear warheads to defend themselves, that has become a real option. Okay, now whether that's saber rattling or threats, which I think it honestly is, it's still kind of scary in the direct escalation of things. All right, so I want to play a clip of Zelensky on his comments on Russia's counterattack. So let's take a look.
Today, our crazy neighbor has once again shown who he really is and how he despises dignity, freedom, and human life in general, and how afraid he is. He is also so afraid that he is already using new missiles.
CNN obtained these exclusive images of the missile debris, Ukrainian experts poring over the pieces to determine what this new threat is. Little dispute, it was something new.
His crazy neighbors, he can't believe that they would escalate this thing out of control. It's like, you literally just sent ATACM rockets into Russia. You literally just escalated the war dramatically, and then when they respond, right, it's, oh, they're big, bad, mean Putin and Russia. Like, it's just, come on, right? Like, it's like you go out, you talk shit to somebody, you get punched in the face, right, and it's their fault. Like, come on, man, grow up. It's just silly. Like, again, why this, like, trying to get this conflict to escalate in the last couple months of it. It's just, I don't know. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me on either side. I mean, again, we talked about earlier why this is happening, but still, really, really odd. Now, and Putin has also made it very clear that he is not going to allow NATO, and by extension the United States, to place long-range missile systems on the border of Russia, okay? So that's what he said his reason for this counterattack was, right? And again, not pro-Russia, but yeah, I can understand. If we had, right, if we were at war with China or whoever, and they had rocket systems all along the border of the Canadian and the United States of America border, we would probably do something about that too, okay? Now, what happens next, all right? So in the short term, to me, this just looks like tick for tat, short-term escalation. I know everybody's worried about nuclear war and World War III and things like that. If the other side would have won, I think that's something that's extremely scary to be thinking about. But Putin knows that this war is about to be over. He's already stated that he's 100% on board with coming to the negotiation table once Trump is in office. And, you know, you love him or hate him, Trump is a deal maker, okay? So the odds that this war continues in its current form for the next 1, 2, 3, 4 years, I don't think there's any realistic possibility of that. We can fact check this one a year from now and come in hindsight. But again, short term, I think we are going to see escalation. Why? Right? I think we're trying to destabilize Europe and, again, the global economy and potentially get a foreign conflict to spiral out of control that Trump has to deal with it potentially for his entire time in office. Right? Derails that. 2028 rolls around. Democrats can then say, look at the war, or look at the world and how it's caught on fire under Trump. You should vote for us now. That's what I think the long-term game plan is, right? But it's also going to depend on the U.S.'s response to Russia's recent counterattack, okay? If we decide to ramp it up and start sending fucking cruise missiles into Moscow, yes, this thing could spiral out of absolute control, which none of us want to see that, or at least I hope you don't, right? But what's going to happen long term? We kind of talked about it here and there, right? Well, when Trump takes office, again, everybody knows you're going to have to come to the bargaining table, okay? And who doesn't have is not really going to have a seat at the bargaining table? Ukraine, okay? Again, they have no leverage, they have no money, they have no ability to fight the war without the United States. So they're basically just beholden on whatever the United States says. Like, you're going to do this, it is what it is. Otherwise, the United States can say, good luck, right? And now Russia actually just invades and takes your country because, again, you can't defend it without the backing of the United States. That's been clear. We've sent over $100 billion in equipment and everything else, right? We all know that's the case. The reality is Ukraine is going to lose territory. Right? Everybody's going to be up in arms about me saying that, but that is reality. They're most likely going to lose a lot of territory in the Donbass, right? Putin is going to want to get a buffer on his border so that this type of thing doesn't happen again, all right? All right, Ukraine is not going to get back Crimea or anything like that. I think the reality is you're going to see something in negotiation along the lines of an agreement that Ukraine can never join NATO, that basically you have to keep long-range missile systems a certain distance away from Russia, a bunch of different stuff like that. That's what I think the actual reality of what that negotiation is most likely going to look like, right? The reality is, and if you don't like that and you're upset about that and you think big bad Russia, big mean bad Russia invaded a sovereign country, yada, 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 the same thing Fox News and CNN and MSNBC told you for 2 years, that's fine, okay? But the reality is nothing good is coming from this war. Nothing good. Hundreds of thousands of people have died, all right? There's no upside, okay? Who wins this, right? Like, either way, there's no winners on either side of this, okay? So maybe Russia gets a little bit of territory. Maybe, let's say Ukraine got Crimea back, all these things, like, that's not worth, hundreds of thousands to potentially millions of people dead in the long term, okay? War is not a good thing. I'm not going to pretend it is, and especially one that's sort of as needless as this one is, all right? So, yeah, guys, that's pretty much going to wrap up this one. You know, it's going to be interesting to see how foreign conflict and foreign policy shapes up in the next 3 months. All right, I do think, again, this is not the last of it. It's not going to be the last of it between Israel and Iran before then. And I'm just hoping that potentially calmer heads can prevail, right, over the next couple months, and you know, we don't basically light the entire world on fire before Trump even gets into office to deal with it. But it's going to be a scary 3 months nonetheless, and we will just have to wait and see what happens. So, hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I will catch you on the next one.